Shockwaves rip through the gallery as week 3 roars back to life, and day 10 threatens to detonate every comfortable notion of Sean Combs' innocence. Minutes after the gavel, the jury is reminded that yesterday's witness list read like a parade of devastation. George Kaplan, ex-assistant turned reluctant whistleblower, described a private jet morphing into a flying cage when Combs struck Cassie across the face, then demanded special creams to mask the swollen evidence. Kaplan also painted Gina Hwine cowering behind seat cushions while green apples became weapons, each bruising arc a warning to anyone who questioned the mogul's grip on power. But Kaplan was merely the prologue to a darker chapter. Kid Cudi took the stand next, voice steady, yet eyes flaring, recounting the long-rumored break-in where Combs allegedly tore open Christmas presents, terrorized a dog, and left a Molotov greeting that later turned Cudi's Porsche into a crackling torch on a Los Angeles street. Defense attorneys tried to erase the rapper's words overnight, filing motions to strike every reference to the firebomb, but the motion itself only amplified the spectacle, spotlighting the unanswered question, who handled the bottle laced with partial female DNA that now hangs over today's testimony like poisonous mist? The court also heard from makeup artist Mila Morales, who described Cassie's face mottled with fingertip marks, and from hotel manager Frederick Zamure, who testified about exact 75-degree suites doused in air freshener to bury unspoken odors that trailed Combs' entourage. HSI agent Josh Croft followed, verifying data extractions from Cassie's laptop, yet leaving jurors hungry for context. Every thread pointed back to one name, Capricorn Clark, the former aide who once vanished for 5 days under lie detector lights and resurfaced claiming threats of a watery grave. Now the room tightens as she steps forward, sworn in beneath fluorescent glare, ready to unveil the subterranean machinery that kept Bad Boy's empire humming. Picture being marched into a gutted midtown office, a folding table, your only furniture, while a stranger the size of 2 linebackers chain smokes and warns that failure today ends with your body sinking in the East River. That was Capricorn Clark's reality in 2004, when 3 diamond pieces loaned to Sean Combs vanished, and the rising assistant was branded the culprit. For 5 straight days, she was wired to a polygraph, doors locked, cell signal dead, and every inconclusive spike on the monitor brought a fresh threat from Uncle Polly offered that she would never see daylight again. The interrogator's cigarette cloud mixed with her own panic as she realized no one knew where she was, and the mogul she served had left her to the mercy of hired muscle. The ordeal began hours after Combs' Central Park warning that her past link to Suge Knight meant she could be erased if a West Coast feud resurfaced. A threat, she says, carried grave weight coming from a man who flaunted firearms as casually as wristwatches. Inside the makeshift chamber, the lie detector straps bit into her ribs while a chain of yes or no questions blurred under sleep deprivation, and each time she begged to leave, the answer was a flat no. Her salary at the time was $55,000. Yet in that moment, she understood the true cost of Combs' loyalty, absolute obedience or professional extinction. When the polygraph finally spat out a reading that satisfied her captors, Clark was ordered back to Bad Boy headquarters without apology, still wearing the same clothes, adrenaline masking the hunger gnawing at her stomach. Combs never mentioned the missing gems again, but the silence itself became a shackle. She stayed because quitting would brand her a thief, and because the industry grapevine already hummed with stories of people blacklisted for lesser defiance. In the months that followed, she fetched ecstasy tablets and cash bricks, booked alias hotel suites, and learned that cameras, baby oil, and small bottles of lubricant always traveled first class inside the boss's duffel. Yet the East River ultimatum was only a dress rehearsal for December 2011, when Combs arrived at her apartment with a pistol in hand and a mission to hunt down Kid Cudi over Cassie's secret romance. But then the elevator doors opened, and the real nightmare rolled into the Hollywood Hills. Sparks fly the moment the black Escalade glides into Kid Cudi's Hollywood Hills driveway, its tinted windows reflecting the panic about to explode. Inside, Sean Combs rides shotgun with a pistol balanced on his lap, having coerced Capricorn Clark into the back seat after storming her apartment at dawn while shouting that he would erase Kid Cudi for daring to date Cassie Ventura. Clark's heart pounds as she secretly dials Cassie's burner phone, warning that the boss is armed and seconds away from confrontation. Across Los Angeles, Cassie braces in silence, aware that Combs has already shattered Christmas gifts and terrorized Cudi's dog during a previous break-in that police never solved. The SUV stops. Combs and his bodyguard Ruben stride toward the front door, checking the lock while Clark watches from the rear seat, praying Cudi is still asleep elsewhere. Moments later, headlights crest the hill. A black Porsche appears and Cudi himself pulls to the curb, recognizes the threat, and speeds away with Combs in pursuit. Police cruisers pass in the opposite lane, summoned by neighbors who heard shouting, but the Escalade veers off, its passengers cloaked by early morning darkness. Combs orders Clark to summon Cassie to a nearby club, insisting she tell the singer he is holding her hostage. Cassie agrees to meet, hoping to calm the situation, yet what follows is brutality in plain view. Clark testifies that Combs drags Cassie from the vehicle and kicks her repeatedly while she curls into a fetal ball on the street. An assault. Clark says she felt powerless to stop after receiving a direct threat that she would be next. Throughout the beating, Clark phones Cassie's mother, pleading for someone to contact authorities because she herself cannot jeopardize the mission to keep Cudi quiet. Minutes later, the convoy reroutes to Cudi's home, where Clark must convince the shaken rapper not to press charges, warning that any official complaint would unleash further violence from Combs' circle. Cudi listens, still shaken by the earlier Molotov cocktail that reduced his Porsche to a charred husk only months before. A firebomb investigator linked to an unknown female DNA profile that prosecutors and defense still battle over in court. Even actress Lauren London's name surfaces as a potential phone witness when Clark admits she stayed on the line during parts of the chaos, placing another celebrity in the crosshairs of testimony. With Kid Cudi temporarily pacified and Cassie wounded, Combs drops Clark at home, vowing that one wrong word will end her career and possibly her life. A threat, she says. He repeated at least 50 times in the years to come. But then the prosecution pivots to the financial pipeline that kept this intimidation machine fueled, exposing mountains of cash, alias hotel suites, and a pharmacy's worth of designer stimulants that Clark ferried across continents. Follow the money trail and you stumble straight into hotel suites where the thermostat locks at 75 degrees and the carpets glisten with spilled baby oil that housekeeping must scrape out before the next VIP checks in. New York Post Capricorn Clark told jurors she booked these getaways under chameleon aliases like Frank Black or Jackie Starr, then stood guard while cameras, lubricant, and a pharmacy's worth of party enhancers were unpacked onto marble tables. When the lights finally dimmed, her real shift began. Sweep the room, erase every trace, and pay any excess cleaning surcharge, often a cool $1,000, before the front desk dared complain. Prosecutors bolstered the story with photographs seized by Homeland Security showing bottles of pink ketamine, stacks of $9,000 in cash, and yet more twin packs of baby oil lined up like props from a low-budget movie set. A Beverly Hills manager testified that candle wax and strange odors always followed Combs' entourage, forcing staff to close suites for deep cleaning, something the defense could only shrug off as eccentric preference. Meanwhile, an independent report on former aide George Kaplan echoed Clark's account, noting he too was ordered to bag empty liquor bottles, wipe down headboards, and stash party supplies after Combs' late-night marathons. Clark described courier runs for ecstasy tablets, branded with cartoon faces, prescription bottles filled under her own name, and a summer trip to the south of France that ended with her lugging 100,000 euros in club cash through customs to feed Combs' bedroom safe. Defense lawyers tried to deflect by waving partial female DNA found on the Molotov cocktail bottle that torched Kid Cudi's Porsche, but the judge allowed the evidence anyway, reminding everyone that money buys a lot, yet not always the last word. Still, Clark insisted the biggest payment was silence. Every overtime hour went unpaid, every raise request shredded, and when she finally quit, Combs allegedly blacklisted her so thoroughly that labels slammed doors before she finished saying hello. But then the narrative pivots from hotel invoices to professional exile, as Clark recounts how a single torn pay sheet cost her health insurance, her apartment, and nearly her sanity, opening the door to the fifth pointer. Whispers of exile sweep the industry the moment Capricorn Clark defies the mogul, and the blacklist he brandishes proves deadlier than any pistol. Within 48 hours of her forced resignation in 2012, recruiters who once begged for her resume suddenly ghosted every email. Insiders later admit the same warning pulsed through boardrooms from Los Angeles to London: hire her and you hire Combs' wrath. A six-figure post at Chris Lighty's Violator Management evaporates overnight when Lighty dies, and an Interscope offer crumbles after a single courtesy call from a bad boy executive proof. Clark says that the blacklist reaches beyond the grave. With severance withheld and health insurance axed, she liquidates savings, pawns designer bags from years on tour, and watches her credit sink while Combs flaunts private jet selfies. Friends urge litigation, but the power imbalance feels insurmountable until an attorney brokers a hush money settlement that forces her to sign a strict non-disparagement clause in exchange for temporary relief. The deal buys groceries yet sacrifices voice. Every job interview ends with a background check that circles back to Bad Boy and ends in silence. Proof that the payment purchased not peace, but prolonged invisibility. By 2016, desperation eclipses dignity. Clark approaches Combs's camp about returning as chief of staff, believing proximity is the only path to rehabilitation. Defense lawyers flaunt her email subject lines like, "Your grace period to be mad at me has lapsed lol," to frame her as a spurned opportunist. Yet the subtext drips with exhaustion. This is a woman cornered by an employer who controls both the doorway in and the gate out. Even after re-entry, the financial chokehold stays tight. Overtime remains unpaid. HR requests are shredded in front of her, and one missed vacation form triggers instant termination that strips her $401k and medical coverage, pushing her son's therapy bills into collections. Meanwhile, prosecutors illustrate how the mogul bankrolls intimidation. 100 zero-stuffed in duffels after European club gigs, brick-bundled cash routed to bedroom safes, and weekly luxury suite invoices padded with mysterious cleanup fees for wax, oils, and broken decor. Every dollar underscores a system where silence costs less than accountability, and Clark's ruined credit score stands as Exhibit A. But then, as the courtroom projector flashes screenshots of her 2024 plea, "I want my life back. You kidnapped me," the strategy of fear begins to fracture, setting the stage for a counteroffensive where settlement clauses may crumble under the weight of federal racketeering charges. Handshakes in private conference rooms sometimes detonate careers faster than gunfire. And the deal Capricorn Clark signed in 2012 proves it. After months of harassment over the missing diamond pieces and endless 20-hour workdays, she was offered a confidential settlement that delivered a quick cash infusion but imposed a gag order to her future. The agreement looked like salvation until she discovered the fine print barred her from criticizing Combs or disclosing anything about his business, effectively turning silence into a lifetime payment plan she could never finish. Almost immediately, the blacklist kicked back in. Job offers at Violator Management collapsed the day founder Chris Lighty died, leaving Clark without a champion, just as rumors swirled that Combs' team had cautioned partners to steer clear of her legal baggage. An Interscope position vaporized next when a label executive admitted off the record that hiring a recent Combs litigant was bad optics. The message was unmistakable: stay quiet, stay broke, or crawl back. By 2016, she did return, accepting a subordinate role in Combs' empire because the NDA had salted the earth everywhere else. Her raises remained capped, overtime went unpaid, and every HR complaint vanished like smoke. Each paycheck reminded her that the document she signed cost more than it paid, yet breaking it risked financial ruin and fresh retaliation, including threats she would never work again. Then, Cassie Ventura's 2023 civil complaint hit the docket, describing a decade of coercion and forced intimacy, reigniting Clark's trauma, and prompting a 2024 email to Combs that read, in part, "I want my life back. You kidnapped me." Defense lawyers now brandish that email to paint her as an opportunist angling for re-entry, but prosecutors counter that the note shows how NDAs corral victims into silence until fresh litigation cracks the wall. As federal racketeering charges expand the stakes far beyond civil payouts, settlement clauses may crumble under subpoena light, freeing Clark and countless others to speak without fearing instant bankruptcy. But then, the spotlight swivels to the celebrity phone logs, Lauren London's number chief among them, hinting that star witnesses could soon undercut the defense's narrative and launch this trial into uncharted territory. All eyes pivot as star names spill from seized phone logs, triggering a celebrity domino effect that threatens to topple every protective barrier Sean Combs has built. Prosecutors display metadata from Clark's BlackBerry and Cassie's burner, showing late-night calls that triangle between Clark, Cassie Ventura, and actress Lauren London during the pre-dawn panic at Kid Cudi's Hollywood Hills home, a revelation that places a respected public figure squarely within the timeline of the alleged armed confrontation. Attorneys bristle, yet the judge allows jurors to see a call duration chart that lasts 2 minutes, 8 seconds, enough for Clark to whisper that Puff has a gun before the line went dead. The Starlink does more than glamorize the docket. It undercuts the narrative that only disgruntled employees accuse the mogul. London has maintained cordial ties with Combs for years, a fact the defense hoped would inoculate them, but call records stamped December 22, 2011 now suggest she heard the chaos live. Jurors lean in as prosecutors note that Los Angeles police logged multiple 911 calls from that hillside at the same time, although no arrest followed because the Escalade fled before patrol units arrived. Digital breadcrumbs widen when an FBI analyst testifies that Cassie's laptop backups hold deleted messages in which Combs threatens to leak intimate footage unless she cuts ties with Kid Cudi. The analyst also recovers an encrypted note where Clark warns Cassie that Combs controls the towers, slang for his reach into phone companies that can reveal call locations within minutes. The claim aligns with earlier testimony that private investigators on Combs' payroll routinely pinged employee phones, tracking movements in real time. Just when the gallery thinks the tech talk is done, prosecutors remind jurors of the female DNA on the Molotov cocktail bottle that torched Cudi's Porsche, a detail the defense intends to spin as proof someone else stoked the blaze. Yet the government counters that fingerprint smudges and text chains place Combs' associate near a hardware store hours earlier, buying the same brand of lighter fluid found at the scene, reinforcing a pattern of using proxies to commit violent acts. Clark's blacklist saga resurfaces through recovered emails where she begs executives for work, only to be met with radio silence moments after bad boy calls, underscoring how digital evidence now traces retaliation as clearly as it maps assaults. Observers note that such electronic breadcrumbs are immune to spin, and the looming appearance of an arson expert, plus potential subpoenas for phone witnesses like London, could flip the trial's momentum irreversibly. But then, the judge summons the jury for a special session on forensic fire patterns, signaling that the data storm is about to ignite a scientific blaze that no amount of celebrity sheen can extinguish. Sirens wail through the courtroom metaphorically when the government's fire expert rolls in charred remains of Kid Cudi's Porsche door and a glass bottle still flecked with lighter fluid residue, turning the witness box into a science lab that slices through spin. He starts with a laser pointer tracing flame arc lines that prove the accelerant splashed across the wheel well in a deliberate fan shape, no random spark, no faulty wiring, only a hand-guided throw that turned premium gas into a rolling torch. Then comes the Bombshell slide, a DNA chart in bold red ink showing that skin cells recovered from the bottle's neck match a female contributor, not Sean Combs, undermining the defense's claim that no one in our circle touched that firebomb. Prosecutors counter by calling investigator Jimenez, who explains that Combs' security detail included female assistants skilled at supply runs, and one such guard bought identical lighter fluid hours earlier, caught on a hardware store camera the jury has already seen. Jimenez adds that GPS data from the vehicle tracker on Combs' Escalade places the SUV within 400 feet of Cudi's driveway minutes before the explosion, syncing with Kid Cudi's frantic 911 call, now played in court. When the chilling audio ends, faces in the gallery blanch as Cudi's voice cracks, "He finally did it." Capricorn Clark returns for rebuttal, confirming she saw Combs' associate Ruben hand a bottle to an unknown woman during the Hollywood Hills drive-by. She remembers the faint smell of fuel even before the glass shattered. The defense tries to pivot, pointing to the female DNA as exculpatory, but the expert clarifies that multiple profiles can be present and that heat often degrades dominant signatures while preserving trace contributors. The point lands hard. The absence of Combs' DNA does not erase orchestrated intent, especially when phone records show him issuing real-time orders from Clark's stolen handset, instructions relayed while actress Lauren London unknowingly listened on the other line. Across the aisle, reporters scribble as prosecutors unfurl a cash flow graphic linking European club bookings to clandestine payments for cleanup crews, the same ledger entries Clark swears bankrolled hardware, fuel, and hush money. The visual leaves jurors staring at a money pipeline that feeds directly into scorched metal leftovers now sitting 5 feet from them. But then the judge signals tomorrow's session will shift from flames to bruises, summoning medical experts who x-rayed Cassie Ventura after the Hollywood Hills beating evidence poised to intensify the heat even further. The x-ray slides hit the projection screen like blunt force truth, exposing bone-deep damage that makeup could never hide. A trauma specialist walks jurors through Cassie Ventura's rib images, explaining hairline fractures consistent with stomping or kicking while the victim is curled defensively, language that freezes every note-taker in the press row. Close-ups of contusions follow, their violet borders dated December 2011. The same night, Kid Cudi's Porsche burned and Sean Combs allegedly booted Cassie down a Hollywood street. Next, makeup artist Mila Morales mounts the stand, voice trembling, as she recalls hotel quarrels that ended with Cassie's eye swollen shut and a lip split wide enough to seep through foundation. Morales tells jurors she once whisked Cassie to her own apartment, calling a doctor friend for advice because police felt too risky when the aggressor owns half the music industry. Prosecutors reinforce her story with photos Cassie's mother snapped at home, images of bruised shoulders and a dark welt the size of a fist across her lower back. Memories so raw the courtroom hushes as each slide appears. Defense counsel tries to undercut the visuals by suggesting the injuries stem from rough choreography, but but the specialist fires back that choreography rarely produces symmetrical rib cracks and parallel boot imprints. The pushback falters further when the doctor notes that Cassie's medical file lists blunt abdominal trauma and probable internal bleeding alongside her refusal to name the attacker, classic hallmarks of intimidation. As the lights rise, jurors glance at Combs, whose poker face slips just long enough for reporters to scribble jaw clenched. Prosecutors seize the moment by projecting text threads where Combs demands Cassie smile for the cameras hours after doctors advised bed rest, underscoring how image management eclipsed her health. The sequence lands like a closing gavel. Medical science, eyewitness corroboration, and digital receipts now align against the mogul. But then the government widens the lens, pivoting from human damage to the corporate machinery that allegedly funneled club money, illicit substances, and hush settlements through shell entities, and Empire prosecutors say meets every element of racketeering. Alarm bells ring across Wall Street and Hollywood alike as prosecutors unveil a flowchart showing Combs Enterprises' glossy logos: Sean John, Revolt, Bad Boy, love records interlaced with shell LLCs that funneled club cash, hush settlements, and cleanup budgets into a single war chest used to bankroll intimidation. A forensic accountant testifies that European appearance fees often paid in stacks of euros. Clark once lugged through customs, were skimmed into entities with names like Sky, High Entertainment, and Blue Flame Holdings, then bled back out as consulting payments to bodyguards, private investigators, and off-the-books drivers linked to assaults described all month. The chart also tracks at least 9 wire transfers labeled Hotel Incident Recovery, each exactly $1,000, the same fee Beverly Hills and Bel Air hotels charged after rooms were left slick with baby oil and candle wax, according to testimony from ex-assistant George Kaplan. Those expenses, prosecutors argue, prove that Combs' private liaisons were not personal indulgences, but integral acts of a criminal enterprise whose brand equity depended on erasing evidence before sunrise. Defense counsel fires back that every conglomerate employs affiliates for tax efficiency. Yet the indictment on the screen lists bribes to nightclub security, hush money to frighten partners, and bulk drug purchases, all booked as marketing. To underscore pattern over coincidence, agents replay security video of the May 2024 Miami mansion raid. Pallets of ketamine, pill presses, and pink label MDMA seized beside contracts bearing Combs' electronic signature. Capricorn Clark returns once more, confirming she routinely deposited event advances into a Chase account ending in 7,474, only to withdraw identical amounts as cashier's checks for undisclosed payouts. She explains that whenever a witness threatened to sue, be it a hotel maid, a driver, or a flight attendant, Combs' attorneys wired money from a Delaware LLC and sent her to hand-deliver non-disclosure agreements by dawn. Jurors glance between the balance sheets and the X-ray images of Cassie's fractured ribs shown yesterday, absorbing how corporate polish masked physical ruin. A racketeering professor testifies that under RICO, prosecutors need only show 2 predicate crimes within 10 years to brand an enterprise criminal. Here, they allege a mosaic of arson, coercion, narcotics trafficking, and interstate transport for illicit encounters dating back to 2008. Finally, the government flashes the sealed, superseding indictment, count 1. Racketeering, conspiracy, its paragraphs reading like a greatest hits album of violence and payoffs. Reporters feel the temperature drop as the professor notes that RICO allows uncharged acts from Kid Cudi's firebombed Porsche to the East River lie detector ordeal to be considered proof of a coherent pattern. The hook snaps shut with the prosecutor's closing line of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, this was never a party, it was a business model. Court recesses, cameras flash, and the gallery buzzes with one question. How many more insiders will flip now that the Empire's own ledgers testify louder than its creator?